Hi Peter, thanks for the footage and thanks for making contact regarding some online stroke real world lessons when lockdowns permit. Hopefully you're keeping well in some very strange times, and like you say, at least we've got the golf studio here at home to do a little bit of practice in. Just been reading through your notes, obviously low point issues, thins and heavy shots, having dabbled with stack and tilt in the past. So in regards to your setup position, relatively happy with that. Little tweak that I would make would be primarily to the trail arm. You may want to just rotate the trail hand under, so making it stronger by maybe 20 degrees. What this will do is this will pull back the right shoulder. It will soften up the right arm. So your right arm starts off, it's in a very pronated position. As a result, shoulders forward. This can have an impact on the way you take the club back. So I would look at just strengthening the trail hand, like I say, maybe 20-30 degrees turned under, and in turn that'll soften up that trail side and make it easier for you getting the club working backwards in the correct manner, or certainly a more appropriate manner. So just that one little tweak at setup. In regards to the overall pattern, so I'll just sync these two swings up. The camera angle's a little bit deceiving here, but you can see on the left hand side the hand path is a little bit up and out during the early part of the takeaway. You do a pretty good job of getting the shoulder working down. Knees are changing flex nicely, but because of that setup position with the trail side, the hand path is just pushed out a little bit more, and the club traces slightly sort of outwards, if not too straight, route from P1 to P1.5. So just a little bit of tidying up a setup would help with that. What we see is the trail shoulder working downwards as the knees change flex when we're looking at it from face on, head staying in the box, and then from about P3 the turn starts to overpower the extension and the side bend, and that's when the head starts to go down and across. So the trajectory of the lead shoulder, if we're going to swing around a fixed point, we're swinging the club on an arc, the hands in an arc. For the shoulders to work on an arc, the knees must change flex and the spine must change flex continuously throughout the time and space of the backswing, which would get the lead shoulder working down and across or down and around continuously throughout the backswing. We're doing a pretty good job of that up until about P3. Then, as we said before, the shoulder turn levels out, and that's when the head is pushed off the golf ball. No amount of weight forward would stop that from happening. That's an issue, generally speaking, because the player historically has only ever really understood the turning aspect and never fully appreciated the extension and the side bend. So the rotation's a pretty easy conversation to have. It's a pretty easy thing to see and work on. The other two are more tricky to spot and certainly more tricky to work on, but are actually more beneficial to your golf swing and your ability to control and stabilise the centre of the shoulder turn. So whenever we look at a player who has stopped extending, and as you stop extending, there's no need to side bend anymore because there's nothing to offset. So the extension and the side bend work and complement one another. What we see is a player at the top of the backswing who, and I'm just going to use these as a benchmark for you, as a baseline. You can play around with the feels as you see fit. If for some more images on this or some more feedback on this, you want to watch a lesson that I did for a guy called Cody Collins during the lockdown period over spring. You'll find that on my channel if you just look through. And he did a great job of changing this. And I think it was from his first lesson to his second lesson, possibly second to third. But if you look up Cody Collins on my channel, you'll see a great example of the visual or feels that I'm now going to give you. The player who rotates without extending and side bending, his ear is pointing upwards or very level, and the chest is pointing more downwards at P4. So the feel would be from P1 to P4, ear to the ground, chest to the sky. So at this point now, we want the ear pointing more downwards and the chest pointing more upwards. So what that's going to start to do is that's going to start to engage the upper part of your spine and your neck, which is the most mobile part of the spine. As we stand at the moment, we're not engaging those enough throughout the backswing. So the extension happens from P1 all the way to P4, extending the trail leg, extending the pelvis, extending the lower spine, extending the mid spine, and extending the upper spine. And it's that last little bit that we're lacking. Certainly extending the trail leg, certainly extending the pelvis. The lower spine's got very little extension in it. The mid spine has some, but the neck is where it's at. So we've got to get that upper spine involved. So your key feel from P1 to P4 is ear to the ground and chest to the sky. As the turn becomes excessive, the head works across, the centre of the shoulder turn works across, and the hand path works too deep. So we should be elevating the club onto the blue line, down the line, and you can see that you're getting below it. As you now change direction, you see the shoulders level out pretty quick. So if you look at the down the line footage, you see a yellow line on the shoulder tilts at P4, and that shoulders level out in transition. Now that's a sign that the player's lead shoulder is working up too much too soon in an attempt to hit out at the golf ball. So the tendency for yourself, I'm just going to get rid of these lines now, is, as we said before, don't extend and side bend enough P1 to P4. Then we try and work the club under a little bit more. The lead shoulder works up too fast. And what that's doing is that's shifting the swing's direction out to the right. Now, whenever you shift the swing's direction out to the right, you're going to move the low point back. Okay, and that's something that it's easier to go through with you when I've got you on the mat. So for now, you're just going to have to take me on my word for this one. But whenever the swing is directed to the right, the player will tend to have low point issues. The angle of attack becomes too shallow and the low point starts to become compromised. So P1 to P4, ear to the ground, chest to the sky. Then what I want you to spend some time working on is isolating that transition from 4 to 5. So if you swing to P4 and stop, that's a great feel for you where you can check whether the ears to the ground, whether the neck tilts are getting in there, whether the chest is pointing to the sky. From 4 to 5, rather than the lead shoulder working up very quickly, what I want you to do is I want you to feel like the lead shoulder stays level from 4 to 5. 4 to 5, lead shoulder level. 4 to 5, lead shoulder level. Now, a great way of getting this, and I don't know if you can set it up in your studio, I know you've got the map there, obviously you can possibly rig something up, is to hit balls off a downhill lie. Whenever you're hitting balls off a downhill lie, the lead shoulder trajectory levels out from 4 to 5. If it didn't, you'd hit the ground about a foot behind the ball. So it's a great way of getting a feel for what I'm describing to you here, and a great way of conditioning yourself to make that move from 4 to 5. So 4 to 5, shoulder works up a little bit too quick, and we want to try and focus on getting that shoulder working a little bit more level. Now, what I want you to do here now is I want you to film yourself doing the moves that I've just described to you. So a lot of focus needs to be P1 to P4, holding that position, getting familiar with that position. From 4 to 5, so from the top of your backswing till the left arm's parallel with the ground, work the lead shoulder level rather than up, which again is going to prevent the head from dropping back further and start to introduce a little bit more rotation to complement the slide that you've got in transition. So isolating P4, isolating P4 to P5, excuse me, lots of rehearsal swings. I'd like you to film yourself doing that and then send me some footage of it. So just send some footage via WhatsApp as soon as you rehearse this and you feel like you're getting familiar with the moves I've described. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this lesson in 2 parts for you. So I'm going to leave you with this now to focus on. Get me some footage across in the next day or so. And then what I'll do is I'm going to do a comparison between your footage that you've sent here and your footage doing the drill, and just add a little bit more detail to this to complete the first lesson. So a little bit of a different one. You'll have seen on my channel I do this a few times where I do the lesson in 2 parts, but I think it's very appropriate in this instant just to make sure that you're practicing these first couple of things correctly, and then we can just add a little bit of detail to it, and then we can see where we go from there. So get me the footage across via WhatsApp as soon as you feel it's appropriate, and then we'll do part 2. Obviously now going into lockdown, we're both going to have plenty of time to communicate, so feel free to ask any questions and look forward to watching this one progress over the coming weeks.